In this video, I'm going to say a few sentences, then I'm going to prove why those sentences are correct as I go through the rest of the video. A lot of people are going to dislike this video because the sentences that I'm about to say may be a shock to them because no one else in the combat sports world is saying it right now, and I feel like it needs to be said because it's the truth. Here we go. Number 1. Francis Ngannou is not a draw. He actually costs the UFC money. Number 2. The UFC do not care that Francis Ngannou wants to leave the UFC. Number 3. The UFC will move on like nothing happened if Francis Ngannou does choose to leave the UFC, and they will not be affected whatsoever, and this will merely be a footnote in their history. Let's start with number 1. And the reason why I'm saying this, before I even get into number 1, is because Ngannou is doing the rounds in the media right now. And I'm watching him on the True Geordie podcast. I'm watching him on Ariel Helwani's show as well. And I'm seeing this smugness to him, that he seems to think he has a lot of power over the UFC right now. And I think in his mind, he truly believes that he's going to go back into the UFC negotiation room and they're going to pay him a lot of money and they're going to beg for him to stay. And in the media members' minds, this seems to be the same case. Ariel Helwani, True Geordie, all of the media channels that are on YouTube right now, all of the comment sections that are filled with casual fans that have no idea what they're talking about, are all saying the same thing. Ngannou mentions today that he wants to leave the UFC. And the comment section are saying things like, this will show the UFC who's boss. He's really got him on the ropes. And I see headlines of things like Dana White sweating nervously as Francis Ngannou is in the ring with Tyson Fury. And I hear people on their shows in the combat sports world say things like, man, can you imagine what the UFC and Dana White are feeling right now, watching Francis Ngannou and Tyson Fury in the ring together agree to fight? I don't think they care. If anything, they only care because if Francis Ngannou in any rule set whatsoever has a boxing match where only hands are allowed against Tyson Fury, he's going to get completely embarrassed and humiliated, and maybe only then the UFC will be annoyed that once again their sport and MMA in general as a sport has been embarrassed, just like it was when Ben Askren got KO'd by Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley got KO'd by Jake Paul. Okay? That's the only reason they would care. But let's start with number 1. I'm seeing a lot of these media members tell Francis Ngannou that he deserves millions and millions and millions, and he isn't getting what he deserves at the UFC. And I'm thinking to myself, have these guys not seen the pay-per-view numbers? Are these guys not seeing their very own interview numbers that they're putting out with Ngannou? Really? I'm looking at some of these numbers of Ngannou interviews and things along those lines, and I'm thinking, Jesus, this is the guy that should be getting 10 million? 200, not even 200k on True Geordie's podcast. Usman got nearly 2 million, I believe. Definitely over 1 million. Tyson Fury on True Geordie's podcast, where he'd done the Joe Rogan Experience as well. A lot of people like to tell me, well, Ngannou's already been on the JRE Experience, so people don't really want to watch other podcasts with him on there. Tyson Fury's podcast on True Geordie's channel got like 3.5 million views. That's why he earns 30 million. Ngannou, when his name is hot on the press, he's just been in the ring and essentially had a verbal agreement to fight Tyson Fury, the boxing heavyweight champion in the world, where all of the eyes of the world are on combat sports for that very moment, has gone on True Geordie's podcast the very next day, and it hasn't even hit 200k. Covington goes on the Full Send podcast, and I know that Full Send is a bigger podcast than True Geordie's podcast. I completely understand. But not by the margins that they're outperforming True Geordie's podcast in terms of views. Colby Covington, I believe, got over 3 million views on the Full Send podcast. Ngannou, not even 200k. True Geordie on that podcast was rim jobbing Ngannou the entire time, fake laughing at some of the jokes that he was doing, because I know what True Geordie's laugh is, and I'm seeing him suck up to Ngannou because these media members, they don't need the promotion. They hate the promotion. They love the fighter. The fighter comes on their show, and that's how they get views. They need to value the person, not the promotion. The promotion of the UFC cannot feature on the True Geordie podcast or the Ariel Helwani MMA show, so they don't care about them. They're going to suck up to the fighter and tell the fighter how amazing they are. Ngannou's going to get completely ignored. I think the UFC are laughing right now, I'll be honest with you guys. He brought 200k pay-per-view buys to the table against Cyril Gane at UFC 270. Say what you want about any of the reasons why. No star sells 200k pay-per-view buys. This was a massive fight. There was so much going on in the media regarding Ngannou's relationship with the UFC. His name was massive going into this matchup. He was fighting Cyril Gane, a former sparring partner. They had some bad blood. There was some tension between the gyms. They were going back and forth a little bit at the press conference. There was rumours about what really happened in sparring. It had everything you would want to actually sell a decent amount of pay-per-views if Francis Ngannou was really a star. It sold 200k pay-per-view buys. And I'm getting this aura from the media and Ngannou that the UFC really won't like this. This'll show the UFC who's boss. I bet Dana White's quaking in his boots watching Ngannou act like he's going to leave the UFC. This'll teach the UFC a lesson. They aren't going to care. They want him gone. He costs them pay-per-view buys. ESPN pays for 500,000 pay-per-view buys worth of value that they give to the promotion of the UFC every single pay-per-view. This is not about whether or not you think Ngannou earns the money that he deserves. I'm just talking about the relationship that they have and how the UFC is going to go about this current friction between the two of them. They pay the UFC 500,000 pay-per-views. Ngannou sold 200,000 pay-per-views. ESPN, in those regards, lost 300,000 pay-per-views worth of money of value by putting on an Ngannou fight. Okay? I don't think you're hearing it right. He didn't do half of that. He didn't come close. Sometimes you hear about Adesanya fights. They haven't released the numbers. Covington versus Masvidal. They haven't released the numbers. That tells me it did somewhere around 400k. 200,000 buys. And when that number was released, did you hear Bellator screaming and begging for an Ngannou crossover? Did you hear ONE FC begging for that either? Any of the major promotions? No, you heard a random Russian guy sitting on a boxing canvas ring in his gym with the ropes behind him saying, I will give Ngannou $3 million for the fight over here in my promotion. There was no big established MMA company begging for an Ngannou crossover. He sold 200k buys. He's not a star. His interviews do very poor numbers. Very poor numbers. Outside of a few here and there that have got their millions of hits. But Volkanovski's have got millions of hits. And he's not a star. You know what I mean? Volkanovski's had those interviews that have got 800,000 views. 1 million views. 1.2 million views. On certain shows that have massive audiences. But when it's Ngannou's job to bring the value himself, which is what he will have to do outside of the UFC if he does leave, it's non-existent. He's not going to be able to go to another MMA promotion and sell pay-per-views and get a lot of money. They'll probably pay him a lot of money for one fight and then realise, hold on, we've sold 40k pay-per-view buys. And I'm worried for Ngannou because everyone's lying to him. And they're acting like he's going to sell millions and millions. And he's not. He really isn't. He sold 200k buys. Moreno was on that card. The arena roared for Moreno. They roared and erupted in joy for Moreno as he came out. The entire arena, I will say, was sold out because of Brandon Moreno. How many pay-per-view buys did Moreno account for? 50k? Likely. How many did Figueiredo bring in? 10k? Give or take. Cyril Gane? 30k? Maybe. A couple of other fighters on the card sprinkling in their amounts. I'm being very generous to say that on his own, Ngannou brought in 100,000 pay-per-view buys. Very generous. That's not a star. And before you tell me that UFC 270 card was weak, look at the Cerrone versus McGregor card. That sold comfortably over 1 million pay-per-view buys. That's a star. That's a guy who can go head-to-head with the UFC, but doesn't because he loves to fight anyway. And doesn't complain about money because he gets that pay-per-view share. And Ngannou gets a pay-per-view share. These numbers that come out, and Ngannou only earned $600,000 for his fight against Cyril Gane. They're not true. Figueiredo got a pay-per-view percentage for his defense in the first fight against Brandon Moreno. 5%. Waleed Ismail spoke about it. 5% pay-per-view share for Davis and Figueiredo. Every champion in the UFC above a certain weight class, bantamweight or featherweight, I believe it is, gets a share of the pay-per-views. That's why they have mansions and supercars and things like this. They aren't earning 500k like it says that they're making. Ngannou got 10% of the shares. According to my maths, Ngannou got just under 3 million for his defense against Cyril Gane. If it would have performed well on pay-per-view and wouldn't have just sold 200k buys, he probably would have got a little bit more after that. And that's how it works. That's how Adesanya makes a record amount of money. That's how Masvidal makes a record amount of money. When they get massive amounts and sign those massive contracts that we hear all about. You don't hear them complaining about pay. But you hear Ngannou complaining about pay. And I think there's this narrative that he's entitled to this massive amount of cash. And the UFC are just going to be like, you know what, fuck you, we don't need to give you money. What was my second point? Now that we're 12 minutes in. What was my second point that I made? The UFC will not care if he leaves. I've covered that within what I've just been saying. They aren't going to care. They're going to move on like nothing happened. Let's go to the third point and mix them together. They aren't going to care because without Ngannou, nothing will change. He sold 200k buys. If Tom Aspinall wins in a main event in London again, in front of a sold-out crowd, all cheering his name afterwards, Tommy Aspinall, Tommy Aspinall, the whole crowd going crazy for him. With Pimlet on the card, bringing that value in and spotlighting a massive big sort of beam of light on Aspinall in the main event again. And if Aspinall wins that main event in London, he's their next guy. And that's just how it works. And I'll bet you this, if Aspinall is a champion and they do a pay-per-view in the UK, he'll do similar, if not more numbers at that time. I know it might sound crazy, but he genuinely will. He'll become that next guy. They'll put all their promotional dollars behind him, just like they did for Ngannou when he came up the first time before he lost to Stipe Miocic, and he'll be their next guy. I know he's not full of personality, but neither is Ngannou. Aspinall, if anything, has more personality than Ngannou does. No one really understands Ngannou. He speaks well, he does. He speaks in basic sentences, and it works. But the UFC's just going to move on. Ngannou needed, before he pulled this whole charade, to claim his stake as the best heavyweight of all time. He hasn't done that. He needed to break some kind of heavyweight record that could not be replicated. He didn't do that. He needed to beat a few more names and have that shadow over them as they moved forward within their own careers before he dipped out of the sport. The UFC see Ngannou leaving as a guy who's 1-1 with Stipe, who cannot be declared the greatest heavyweight of all time, who has one title defense, has left our promotion. He went to a decision with Cyril Gane. They will play this narrative. They will play this narrative, I promise you. According to the scoring criteria of MMA. regardless of how you want to score fights. The champ, you need to beat the champ to beat the champ. That whole narrative. Regardless of how you want to score a fight, Ciryl Gane technically did beat Ngannou. Dislike, dislike, dislike. Couple more. Just got a couple more of them. He beat him, according to the scoring criteria of MMA. In round 5, Ngannou did nothing to Gane, other than lay on top of him. He didn't get the takedown in the first place. Gane had top control over Ngannou. Gane got the takedown in the first place. Gane had 2 submission attempts, and Ngannou had none. Ngannou didn't do any ground and pound. Gane outlanded him on the feet on significant strikes, clearly. According to the criteria of MMA, Gane won round 5, and he definitely won the first 2 rounds as well. Gane, on paper, beat Ngannou. And even if you don't think he did, Gane went to a razor-close decision with Francis Ngannou. If any of these up-and-comers beat Gane and finish him, or beat him more convincingly than Ngannou did, and more excitingly than Ngannou did, they now take his place and the UFC will move on. I bet you they are doing Tom Aspinall versus Ciryl Gane in London. Gane from Paris, Aspinall in London, or from England in general. He's from Wigan, a little bit up north in the Midlands area. If Aspinall beats Ciryl Gane and finishes him, they will make the argument, no one's made Gane look that easy. Gane went to a razor-close fight that arguably he could have won against Ngannou. Aspinall destroyed him. And looking at Gane on the ground against Ngannou, is that far-fetched after what Gane just did to Volkov? After what Aspinall just did to Volkov, sorry? Ciryl Gane went 5 tough rounds with Volkov. I thought he won 4-1. He lost the first round against Volkov. Unanimously, I believe, on every scorecard. Maybe. Maybe one guy gave him the first round. But, like, realistically, he did lose that first round to Volkov. He won every round after that, minorly, outlanding Volkov here and there. Aspinall obliterated Volkov. Obliterated him. If he goes out there and obliterates Gane and takes him down in round 1, slipping a jab and shooting that double leg and getting him in a straight arm lock on the ground, he's better than Ngannou. If he defends the belt more than once, he's better than Ngannou. If he goes out there against the winner of Jones versus Miocic after he maybe beats Ciryl Gane, who knows? And piff puff, 1-2, right down the pipe, puts him out cold. Round 1, with his super fast hands. He's better than Ngannou, and they can promote him as such. I don't think that they care. I'm not doing a hit piece on Ngannou. This is what it's going to be seen as. I'm just saying, no one's saying any of this, and it's all the truth. This is what they do. You want to play big man and leave? They move on. They drag your name through the dirt. John Jones wants to hiatus for 2 years. They drag him below Dustin Poirier on the pound-for-pound list. They drag him below Dustin Poirier. Below Dustin Poirier. John Jones, you want to play a game? 2 years off, vacate the belt, ruin light heavyweight for a bit? Oh, okay. Down you go. We ain't going to remove you. We're going to drag you down the pound-for-pound list. That's what they do. That's exactly what they do. And they're going to do it to Ngannou. And I'm not saying this is bad for Ngannou. Good for Ngannou. Make your money against Tyson Fury. You'll probably get about 10 mil. But don't be thinking that you... I see him smirk on these podcasts like, I've got them right where I want them. They'll bow down to me. And all the podcast hosts, good job, Ngannou. We love you. Fake laughing at his jokes. God, you deserve tens of millions, Ngannou. Clapping their hands together like True Geordie. Read his DMs. Fuck, that podcast made me cringe. If you've seen True Geordie's leaked DMs, you can't watch that Ngannou podcast the same way. You just can't. It was making me cringe. Fucking hell. But either way, they'll move on. He's not a draw. He won't be a draw anywhere else. If there's another MMA promotion, like Bellator or ONE FC, and they see that Francis Ngannou sold 200,000 pay-per-view buys, with the UFC as his suspension of promotion. They're going to think, well, that means he sells 50k for us. Well, that means he sells maybe 100k for us. Even the boxing promotion that's going to maybe, or whatever management company is going to set up Ngannou versus Fury. Is that going to be a fight that everyone pauses what they're doing to watch live like they do a McGregor fight? Do you really think? Look at the Fury versus Wilder 3 numbers. That was supposedly a fight the world would pause to watch. They didn't do too good. How much are they really going to pay Ngannou for this Fury crossover match? 5 mil? 6, 7, 10 is a push? And even then, that might not be a good return of investment. How many pay-per-views, realistically, do you think Ngannou versus Fury will do as its own thing? What are they going to put on the undercard? What are they going to put on the undercard? Maybe they organise a Jake Paul undercard feature. Will Jake Paul want to be on the undercard? Or will he want to be his own main event, like he's done so far? Tommy Fury on the undercard versus someone? Another can? How much is that going to sell? Why aren't we having these conversations with Ngannou? I really hope, beyond all of this, Ngannou's manager is having these conversations with him and giving it to him straight. Because I feel like everyone's just like, yeah, do it, Ngannou. Separate yourself. Get us paid. Come on our show, media members. Come on our show. Talk about it. Get me paid. I'll suck up to you. Management company. Yeah, leave them. Give me a more of a percentage. And Ngannou's career, it might be a flash in the pan after this. He genuinely might have one fight against Tyson Fury, get fucking humiliated by him, and destroyed in a boxing match, unless they do some MMA mix-over thing where maybe Ngannou would win and have a chance. If he fights Fury and gets humiliated, Ngannou versus Dillian White next? What are we talking about? Oh, well, can't wait for that Ngannou versus Arhanbullah matchup. Seriously, someone have these conversations with Ngannou. If you are a member of Ngannou's team, and you've made it through 22 minutes into this video, have these conversations with him. This is not a good business move. And when maybe his career doesn't go to plan, and he loses a bunch of stock because he gets humiliated by Tyson Fury and made to look like a fool, just like Dillian White was, but way worse because he's only been boxing for a very short period of time, and he couldn't land a punch on Cyril Gane, who started combat sports maybe 6 years ago. Seriously. Ngannou's going to go and have a good showing against Fury. Ngannou can't walk properly right now. You think he's training boxing right now enough to beat a guy like Tyson Fury or have a good showing? Dillian White's trained for it his entire life nearly. From a young teenager up until now. Ngannou, who can't even walk right now, is going to be able to adjust to a new sport come next year when he's finally ready to start training again. He's going to have a good showing against Fury after a couple of months of training in any rule set they do. After that Fury fight, where all of his management team and all of his people around him and all of his separate promoters that he goes to organise the matchup, after they scoop in and take their share of Ngannou's big revenue from that Fury crossover match, what happens to Ngannou afterwards? Seriously. Where does he go? Dillian White? Maybe Deontay Wilder, but will Wilder want AJ Usyk loser? Legacy fights that are equally going to bring him those big pay-per-view checks? And if it isn't boxing, and boxing doesn't want anything to do with him after maybe he gets humiliated by Tyson Fury, and they don't see him as a draw. Arhanbullah, Ryan Bader. UFC ain't taking him back after all this. Just wanted to get that off my chest. I hope you made it to the end of this video, because I think making it to the end will give you a full perspective of what this video is meant as. This is like a distress signal to Ngannou. You're severing so many relationship ties for one payday, when you could have kept a strong relationship and did this very differently and made a collection of paydays. But maybe he'll be in Fast and Furious 30. I don't know. No one's having these conversations. Everyone's just sucking up to him. I don't need him on my show. I don't need an Ngannou interview to have views on my channel like Ariel Helwani and True Geordie and stuff like that. But, I'm not even shitting on him like True Geordie wishes Ngannou would do to him. Read the DMs. I'm just saying, like, no one's having these convos, and it's just sad, I think. I think this is all managers thinking of their short-term interest rather than the long-term interest of Ngannou. Ngannou made $3 million. If he got a 10% share like so many others have in the heavyweight division, and so many other champions have got, champions get 20%, 15%, 25, 30. GSP was getting 10% fucking a decade ago nearly. You don't think Ngannou's getting 10%? If he is, that's $3 million. He's got a 400k watch, a G-Wagon, a mansion, multiple, parading around Cameroon. He's got bank. He could have kept making sufficient bank. If you would have just been nice to the UFC and said, hey, let me get 15% next fight. Wins that one against who? Stipe Miocic in a trilogy? The John Jones one? Hey, I don't want a massive pay increase, but give me 20% of the pay-per-view shares. 1 million pay-per-view sold against John Jones. $80 times 1 million. 80 mil. What does he get? 20%, 15%, 10% of that 80 mil? Ka-chink! 8 mil in his bank. Now we're closing on that. Now we're closing in on that 10 milli payday. Let's say he beats John Jones. Renegotiate now. Give me my new paycheck now. I want 1 million to show. I want 20% shares. Now his name value's up, and he's getting consistent 10 mils. This could have been done so much better, and they've messed up his career, I think. I want Ngannou to fight the biggest names in MMA, and I want to keep seeing him in the UFC, and it's all ruined. And I think people who don't even watch the UFC just want what's best for Ngannou because he's seen as the victim for reasons I don't want to even get into. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button up there. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.